I recognize the member from Oshawa.
Thank you, Speaker, and I am glad to be able to add my voice on the bill, on the debate on Bill 33, named the Supporting Children and Students Act, if only that had anything to do with this piece of legislation. This is an attack on trustees and the rights of parents to access their elected local representatives when it comes to their children and their education. This bill from this Premier remains a dangerous power grab that threatens our schools, campuses and communities. It centralizes control in the Premier's office, it undermines local democracy, and it risks cutting the very student services and classroom supports that keep young people safe and supported. And, Speaker, I will say that drawing from the many years that I spent as a classroom teacher, I know that at that time we were on a downward trend in terms of having the resources that were needed. And it's only gotten worse. And all of us in this room, regardless of party, have inboxes that are full and overflowing from community very concerned about this piece of legislation. This bill gives the minister the ultimate authority over school boards who are democratically elected in their local communities. I would like to know why the minister is seeking to remove those local voices. This government has cut funding by $1,500 per student, leading to many school boards reporting deficits or cutting programming. Are there any measures in this bill, Speaker, to provide adequate funding to our schools? No. No, there is not. The Minister of Education seems to resent that there are layers of democracy that he can't control. Actually, I don't know what is driving him, but that's how it appears. It's another weird government vendetta bill, and it's getting tired, but it's also getting worse. This is not helping students. This is not helping communities. There's nothing in this bill about fixing our crumbling schools or putting more caring adults in classrooms or making sure that our kids have what they need to succeed. Instead, they're focused on locking parents out of being able to have a say about their kids' education. The government's recommendations ignore the real concerns raised by students, parents, and local communities, and it destroys the ability of our school boards to listen to their community and prioritize safety through care. This bill does nothing to fix the $6.35 billion funding gap created by this government. The bill tries to mask chronic underfunding with control, interference, and political spin where post-secondary students are paying the price. And I'll tell you, Speaker, what students need is not more control from Queen's Park. This is not about fairness. This is about distraction. It gives the Minister of Education the power to appoint whoever he wants, wherever he wants in our education system. It takes the voice of parents and local communities away and does nothing to address the funding shortfalls in our schools. And I want to say as an MPP, like all of my colleagues, we have built relationships with local trustees. And when we can't solve a problem, chances are it's because of the chronic underfunding, and those trustees are not able to solve the problem because it is bigger than the trustees. Right, yeah. So pointing fingers at trustees is nonsense. Speaker, I would like to share from the Durham Region Labour Council. They've been very active. Lord knows I've been getting a whole bunch of emails. Thank you so much for your activism. But from them, they have said Bill 33 isn't limited to K through 12 schools. It also extends the government's control over universities and colleges, from student fees to admissions and even research oversight. It threatens campus services, academic freedom, and equity in higher education. Across all levels, this bill is part of a broader agenda to silence local voices and centralize power. It's about control, not improvement." End quote. Yeah, so many folks are concerned about this. Yep. We've already talked about in post-secondary education, we are at the bottom of the barrel in terms of per-student funding. In this fine country that everybody's excited about, talking about how strong we are putting all of our students at a disadvantage. It used to be that healthcare and education helped to build our country and strengthen our workforce, but this government is so glad to keep the funding so low that we are at the bottom of all of the provinces in the country by a long shot. And I think there are two North American jurisdictions that are lower than we are in per-student funding. It's like Alabama and anybody? Anyway, I'll get back to you. But Alabama, suffice it to say, no offense to Alabama, but we would like to be at the top in North America, at the top of the country, even halfway up the pile. But no, here we are at the bottom. But I digress. Speaker, so many folks have been writing in demanding that this government reverse course and stop the attack on trustees. I want to read here from Joel Smith, who wrote in, I'm writing with concerns about Bill 33 and the Minister of Education's comments about eliminating elected school boards. We recognize that school boards are struggling after years of chronic provincial underfunding and that every dollar should go to supporting students. Replacing elected trustees with hand-picked, government-appointed supervisors who lack education experience is alarming. Such action also lays the path for further cuts to student supports and services that will negatively impact learning and well-being. Decisions regarding police involvement in schools should be made in consultation with all local voices, including parents, students, community members, and organizations led by local school boards, not mandated by the provincial government. Trustees must be free to do their jobs without interference. School boards need adequate and stable funding to support students and educators. Ontario's local school board governance model must be upheld. Trustees are elected to represent our communities. They know our local needs and are best positioned to advocate for students and public education, and they are accountable to the communities they serve. Thank you, Joel, for your thoughtful letter. Lisa Bowman writes in, and by the way, we're all getting letters, Speaker. It's not just me. Lisa says everything we're proud of as Ontarians and as Canadians starts in our classrooms, but Bill 33 puts that at risk. Instead of addressing what students really need to succeed, this legislation hands the government sweeping powers to override school boards and seize control under vague public interest claims. Stripping locally elected trustees of their role silences parents and communities, the very people who keep our schools strong, making it harder for people like me to voice my opinion and ask for help. Our students don't need more centralized control in the back rooms at Queen's Park in downtown Toronto. They need smaller class sizes, more one-on-one time with their teachers, and real and sustained investment in our publicly funded schools. Hear, hear. Thank you, Lisa. Durham District School Board and the DCDSB have put out statements in support of their very hardworking trustees. They value the work that they do. Everybody in the community knows that they need more access, not less. If this government goes through with getting rid of the Ontario Public School Boards Association or OPSPA, then that takes, they're mucking with bargaining. Bill 33 would reshape how Ontario's education workers negotiate and enforce their rights. And as the Durham Region Labour Council pointed out rightly, if trustees are eliminated, OPSPA disappears, and with it the voice of local boards at the bargaining table. Centralized bargaining could replace local negotiations entirely, with Queen's Park imposing one-size-fits-all decisions. This is not okay. This is not how we make things better. Speaker, here from a Durham, oh no, I already read that one. Here we go, from DurhamRegion.com, an article, A Direct Threat. Durham teachers slam Ontario government's Bill 33, warning it could lower education quality and local representation. And I was a proud ETFO member for a very long time, Speaker, before I was elected, or up until I was elected. And this from new President David Maston of ETFO. There is widespread concern about the erosion of local representation. Eliminating elected trustees is not just a bureaucratic shift, it's a direct attack on democratic governance. It centralizes power, undermines equity, silences marginalized voices, harms students, and strips communities of their right to shape public education. This is a dismantling of democracy in real time. Yes, it is. Mr. Maston goes on to say, the elimination of local trustees is a direct threat to Ontario's public education system, as the impact of the Ford government's cuts to public education continues to be felt by students across the province. Without elected trustees, parents and families will be left with nobody to turn to. This doesn't make things better. This doesn't even make sense. Ontario schools have been struggling in terms of class sizes, in terms of an increase in classroom violence. The NDP has put forward a thoughtful plan, the Emergency Safe Schools Plan, to help keep kids safe, and that is created in coordination with workers in the sector. Speaker, I remember 10 years ago, I've been here 11 years ago, but it was early on, a decade or so ago, when I was raising in committee about Kevlar in schools and how much the government was spending and what we were doing to support teachers. And the government of the day at that time, I think it was not this government, had no idea what was going on. And this government, even less do they realize what is going on in the schools. But this bill, not making things better, making things worse. Shame on you.
Questions? I'll go to the member from Whitby.
Thank you, Speaker. The members opposite called Bill 33 an overreach. Yet it simply allows investigations where there's a matter of public interest and lets the minister issue directions or, if necessary, assume control when boards won't fix problems. We've seen what happens without that oversight. Some boards have spent tens of thousands of taxpayers' dollars on luxury trips abroad or box seats to Blue Jays games. Others have burned millions of dollars on lawsuits and internal investigations over trustee misconduct, money that should have gone to classrooms, not courtrooms. What does the member from Oshawa believe school board trustees should be above basic accountability?
The member from Oshawa.
It is so interesting to have a government member ask about accountability or to talk about expensive tickets or misuse of public funds when we have been standing here for the past week and a half talking about the Minister of Labour and what this government feels is appropriate use of funds. But anyway, this is a bill that is trying to mask chronic underfunding with political spin and interference. And if the member's question about trustees, I'll answer that. Trustees ought to be accountable, which means they have to be accessible. And right now, they are elected by their neighbours, okay, that they are findable. If this government gets rid of them, then people will have to track down the illustrious Minister of Education or whoever replaces him in order to have their questions asked or answered. That is not accountability. That is a weird vendetta that is not going to make things better.
Questions? I'll go to the member from Sudbury.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you to both my colleagues for their speech. I have a question for the member for Oshawa, who talked about the chronic underfunding of our schools. Now, this bill seems to be a distraction from that. They're pointing out a handful of individuals with expenses, which is ironic because, Speaker, we had the Minister of Labour go to Paris for a wedding. We had one of the members opposite go to Vegas for a massage. We've had the Minister of Labour get floor seats to a Leafs game and raise a record number of money by people who are rewarded with the skills development funding. So if you want to hold people accountable, you might want to buy yourself a mirror. But Speaker, I'm trying to understand what does adequate funding for our school boards mean for the students? To the member from Oshawa, who was a teacher and would understand firsthand.
Recognize the member from Oshawa.
So I don't know that I can speak to it firsthand anymore. It's been 11 years. But I still listen and know how bad it was at the time. And I know that class sizes have not gotten smaller. I know that there are not more caring adults in the classroom. I know that there are a number of students who have been told that they have to stay home because there aren't supports at the schools for them, that this government is allowing that to happen, that it's gotten so much worse. This government needs to fund education appropriately and not rely on teachers and education workers to spend their own personal money to, offset these cuts. I feel sick to my stomach when they talk about how much they're investing in education. It isn't enough, and it's not keeping up with the costs, whether it's capital investment that's needed, the crumbling infrastructure, whether it's, the cost of providing services like education goes up year over year. So do groceries, right? They're not investing enough. They need to invest in education, invest in our kids, and invest in this province's future.
Further questions? I recognize the member from Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Thank you, Speaker. And I find it interesting that the member from Oshawa talks about letting the constituents decide who's going to be the new trustees or going to be re-elected as trustees, when most of the time I would declare that there is no elections for board trustees. There's very little interest in the board trustees. So I think it's important that students and parents and teachers deserve to know that money being invested into the classroom is actually going to support students. Bill 33 adds ministry auditors and strengthens internal audit requirements for boards. Mr. Speaker, which part of more auditing of public dollars does the member opposite oppose?
I recognize the member from Oshawa.
The beginning of the member's question about his concerns with letting constituents vote for local trustees makes me feel really nervous if that is an indicator of how this government sees a layer of democracy, duly elected trustees. Is it a perfect system? No. Do we in Oshawa have really active and accessible trustees? Yeah, we do. And if that's an anomaly, or if that's not what he has in his writing, then we should all be encouraging people to seek out their trustees. We should be funding education so that those trustees actually can reach for tools to improve our schools. But he's asked about auditing. We all want to make sure that dollars go where they're supposed to, but how about you actually spend the dollars in the first place to meet the needs that everyone interested in education, except for this government, has flagged as being priorities? Spend the money.
Further questions? I go to the member from Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Speaker. That was a very confusing government question. I just want to remind the government member that there are these things called municipal elections and trustees get elected at that time. And I don't know if it's different in different parts of the province or... Anyways, I don't want to even go there. Since there was... I already did. So since they've now appointed someone to take over, for instance, the TDSB, we are seeing classrooms with 3 grades in one class. And then we hear from the government about financial accountability. A government that's put Ontario at $150 billion in debt and counting. A government that has sold Ontario Place, but actually has spent $2 billion to get back $1 billion over 95 years. Anyways, why do they have 2 sets of standards when it comes to this? I don't understand.
The member from Oshawa.
Yeah, Speaker, I can't be expected to answer for them. I have no idea what they're doing. I feel like this bill is a perfect example of something that is not solving a problem that has been identified by experts in the field. This whole concept of a supervisor of a board that we're seeing in a few of the boards, let's just think about the workload of that one individual versus the trustees. I've been asked earlier about audit. The audit committee or parent involvement committee, special education advisory committee, the supervised alternative learning committee, suspension appeal committee, expulsion appeal committee. These are things that are in addition to the meetings that people can go and attend, right? This is in addition to the trustees answering their phone and doing the work in community.
Response, please.
The government has not solved a problem. They've created new layers of problem in this province for education. I can't speak to
Further
why.
questions, please.
Okay. But I will in the next question.
I recognize the member from Whitby.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And my question is to the member from Oshawa. When it comes to keeping our schools safe, early intervention is key, and we've learned that. That's why youth engagement and anti-gang initiatives delivered by school resource officers are so critical. These programs aren't about policing students. They're about building trust, preventing violence, and ensuring that law enforcement can form positive relationships with young people before problems even arise. And Speaker, Bill 33 strengthens that partnership. It does. It's not about turning schools into prisons. It's about making sure every student and teacher feels safe, supported, and yes, respected. As a member officer, support the important proactive work that police officers like the Durham Regional Police Service do every day to keep our schools safe.
Recognize the member from Oshawa.
Thank you. I hope nobody is talking about turning our schools into prisons. That felt weird. I'm going to read part of that letter that I already read from Mr. Smith. Decisions regarding police involvement in schools should be made in consultation with all local voices, including parents, students, community members, and organizations led by local school boards, not mandated by the provincial government. That was from a letter that came in, and I think that it's part of that broader conversation around policing in our schools. But if he's going to talk about best outcomes and early interventions, then let's talk about therapies in school, that the children with special needs who are not getting anything that they need to support them, let's invest in them. That's an early intervention.